I'm making this video because there seems to be people questioning whether or not what I am putting in my videos as Bigfoot activity is real, and they're questioning whether Jim is doing it. So I'm going to address this one time and then never again. This is my diary, my written diary that I've kept from the beginning of everything up until July of this year. I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to show you the reasons why I know it's not Jim. And I'm going to also probably throw in some video here and there to explain it. But like I said, I'm going to do this once. It's not Jim. He swears to me it's not. He doesn't lie to me. He knows how important this is to me, and he would never do that. Also, he's making a statement under my Bigfoot Diary Part 32 video that just came out. He goes by Sandman on YouTube, and so go look at his statement. And so here we go. The first thing I want to say is that my husband has lived on this property for 23 years, and he has had activity the whole time. He didn't especially know what was going on until I came into the picture and we started putting everything together. I moved here in 2007, December. In the spring of 2008, I found a structure, a very large structure that I think was a shelter that could not have been made by a man down in the woods. In 2012, the girl that is now my daughter-in-law, married to a deputy sheriff, saw a Bigfoot cross the road right in front of her, just over the hill from our house, right over there. Now, there had been things going on, like me finding breaks and things down in the woods, like that structure, and things Jim told me happened all through the years. Him and his boys both saw things happen, saw most likely a Bigfoot. The boys did. Jim has seen huge eyeballs, green ones, him and his son, while they were watching fireworks up on the hill behind our house. And they saw the head turn. They had a flashlight, a spotlight, and they were out, they saw it, and it just stood there. It just stayed there. It wasn't an owl, it wasn't a cow or anything like that. There was no cows back there. It was too far away from the woods. But it would just turn its head and look at him. So Jim has seen things here longer than I have, and his boys. But in 2012, when that happened with my now daughter-in-law, I decided it was time to tell somebody about it. So I contacted the BFRO, and two representatives came to my house. We all walked down in the woods. I showed them the shelter, which had already fallen in. It fell in that winter. It had been too long. I waited too long to call them. They said they were glad that, I took pictures of it and everything. And they felt that there were definitely Bigfoot that at least came through our property. I feel that they're here more than just coming through, but they did say that they felt that they at least came through here. So that's pretty much how this started. And, you know, Jim, he's been experiencing this stuff longer than I have. So anyways, this is some of the things that have happened before I even moved in here, and I'm going to let you know some of that, and then we'll move on. Okay, so the reason that I started going in the woods is because I like to take pictures, I like to walk in the woods, I like to explore, and Jim gave me a little camera in 2008. So I was down there exploring the property because I love nature and I love going out, and that's when, you know, I saw that shelter. I took a picture of it, didn't really know what it was, and then started figuring out, yeah, that seems to be one of them things Bigfoot makes. So, because I've always had an interest in Bigfoot my whole life, you know, when I was old enough to understand what it was. So I've always, you know, watched the shows and had a knowledge of Bigfoot enough to know kind of what they do. So like I said, in 2012 is when I started putting it all together, what was going on around here. Now it wasn't until 2015 that the activity started. But stuff happened between 2012 and 2015 that I probably have never even told anybody, you know, publicly. Bigfoot activity and stuff. So anyways, I'm going to let you know some things that happened before I even moved here. Okay, between around 1998 and 2000, my stepson said that he was down by our pond to the east playing, and he had rocks thrown at him. There's no one else around that could have done it. Between 2000 and 2002, see, I don't know these exact dates because Jim has told me this stuff had happened, and he doesn't know for sure when exactly, but he knew about how old the boys were and stuff whenever it happened. 2000 to 2002, both my stepsons were playing down by the woods to the east, which was now what I call Creepy Valley, when they heard something and they looked and saw something large and hairy by a tree. They said it wasn't a bear, and they got very scared and ran home and told their dad what they saw. He said they were so frightened that he knew that they had seen something and wasn't just making it up. When he went down to look to see what it was gone. 2000 to 2004, my husband was having a bonfire out behind our house late at night. They were passing the football back and forth, and it rolled down by where it rolled down between it's a corn crib, not a chicken coop. When I wrote that, I wasn't sure what it was called. And there was a barn over there. Now my oldest stepson, that's now the deputy, went to get the ball, and he came back and he told Jim, I'm not going to get it because there's a big black guy with long fur coat on down there. And he said it was crouched down. My husband went to check, but it was gone. So we're pretty sure he saw Bigfoot sitting over there watching him when I mean, it was probably watching him throw the ball because they're curious like that. But when he went to get the ball, he saw it. And of course, when Jim went back to get it, it was gone because it's pretty much what they do. If they know that you're there and they get a chance, they leave. See, in 2008 or 2009, my stepson was down in the woods to the east. At about 10 p.m., he started back up the path when he heard a low-pitched howl or growl that frightened him. See, this stuff has gone on for years, before I ever even came into the picture. Okay, Okay, now in the spring of 2011 was when I was down in the woods by myself with my camera looking for mushrooms. I ended up down below the pond. I was squatting down looking for the mushrooms and stuff, and I started smelling. I'll read it from here. I started smelling this smell. It was very strong. It seemed to be coming from the hill to my left. The only time I ever remember smelling anything like it was when I was at the zoo outside of the gorilla cage. A very strong, sweaty, animal BO smell. I got very uncomfortable and thought I'd better get up out of there. A day or two later, I went back down there mushroom hunting again. I was coming down the hill from where that smell had seemed to be coming from, and I saw what looked like large footprints coming down the very steep hill, and it looked like whatever it was had slid. I took some pics of it, but it was hard to make out the prints. Now this scared me to death, seeing the footprints, so I called Jim, and I ran up out of the woods to go home. On the way back up by the pond, I found another footprint that was even more distinct than those ones. I could see toes more clearly. Now I took my husband and daughter down to see them, and they weren't sure about them. They thought maybe it was a cow sliding down the hill. But my husband, Jim, was not sure about the one by the pond. And I think they were all big footprints now, looking back on it. Their explanation made me feel good enough that I could go back down in the woods by myself, but that's not what it was. So anyways, Jim thought the one that was down by the pond couldn't be explained so easily. Like I said, now I'm pretty sure that those were Bigfoot footprints, because I've seen them going up and down that hill that I found them. I've seen other footprints. So in July of 2011 was when Jim saw the eyeballs. I'll go ahead and read that experience to you too. On the hill out behind our house, between the sides of the woods, my husband and his two sons were sitting up there watching fireworks at about 10 p.m. You can see several towns' fireworks from a distance up there. They were up there for about 30 minutes, and the whole time they were there, my husband said he saw two great big green glowing eyeballs watching them. He had a spotlight with him and kept shining it on to it to see if it was moving towards them. He said it never moved except for its head would turn and look at them. He said it was too tall and big to have been a cow or deer, and was too far from the trees to have been an owl. He said it was very unnerving, and he can't get that out of his mind. In the summer or fall of 2011, on that same hill out back, but going down the hill to the left side, more towards the woods to the west, I was taking a walk out to the back of the property. I came across an animal carcass, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It looked skinned, but the skin was still there. It was like something turned it inside out. I took my son and husband back to see it, and it took us a really long time to figure out that it was a fox. We have no idea what could have or would have done that, but whatever did it had to be very strong. There were no cuts. So, yeah, I wish I'd taken a picture of that, but I didn't, because I wasn't documenting everything at that time. Then March 3rd, 2012 was the night that my now daughter-in-law saw the Bigfoot cross the road, probably half a mile to a mile from here, just right over that direction. So there was more happened that night than just what she saw. I want to read you that. While I was contemplating submitting this report, these two things happened which made me decide to definitely go ahead with it. My stepson and his two friends were down in the woods to the east. Actually, they were down at that barn that I've shown, between 9 and 11 o'clock. He said that they heard three long, raspy howl, growl type things coming from the direction of the next property over, which is down by where she saw it cross the road. Now, these boys are both hunters, and they go in the woods a lot, and they know that it was not coyotes because we have them around and they know what they sound like. It scared them and they came back to the house. That same evening, and unknown to each other, my now daughter-in-law was driving on the road just to the east of where we live and very near where the boys heard the howls. This friend, or she, was driving down the hill and saw something moving by the fence. For a split second, she thought deer, but then she saw big, glowing green eyes. She stopped her car and said that it stood there and looked at her. It was big and hairy. She said that it was about 2 fence posts high, which would make it between 6 to 9 feet tall, I'm not sure. It looked at her and then ran across the road on 2 legs. So, the next part that I wrote down here, I got a little wrong. I learned later that what happened was she sat there in her car crying, and she called my stepson, and he had to come and get her because she was so frightened. And up until that point, she was a non-believer. She even made fun of my stepson because he does believe in him. But now she believes. She knows they're real because she saw one. This is a picture of the shelter that I found in 2008, and it was big. That little hole that you see right here was 3 feet high. My daughter and I both climbed in there one day, and we could sit in there comfortably. That's how big it was. So I took my brother, I took my nephew, I took Jim, I took Jim's brother. They're all knowledgeable men. My brother he's been a hunter his whole life. He's 12 years older than me. He had no explanation for this. He said it couldn't have been man-made because the logs that were inside of it, holding this, making the base of the structure, were too big for a man to move around. So like I said, this is what got me started in documenting everything. Because this is when I took these pictures. And I started taking some pictures then, but I didn't actually start documenting really good until 2015, which is when the interactions started. I think earlier I said activity, but it's 2015 was when the interaction started between me and the Bigfoots that live here. Okay, like I said, there was things happened between 2012 and 2015 whenever the interaction started that I did remember, and I pretty much, kept a mental note of it. Later on I wrote it down, but here's some of those things. March 19, 2012, I was at the top of the hill in our driveway taking pictures of the sunset when I heard a vocalization come from the woods down the hill to my right on the west side of the property. It came from down by the spring. It was quite loud and it sounded like the Ohio call, which if anybody knows what that is, sounds like a siren. It sounded like a man yelling, only there was no man down there, and it ascended in loudness like a siren. Now within that same week, my son told me that he was sitting outside late at night and he heard what sounded like something took a large tree limb and broke it over its leg. He said it scared him really bad, and he also said that it came from the same area where I heard that vocalization come from. Okay, now this next thing that happened is interesting because if you look through my videos, you'll find the one that says Bigfoot sighting at the end of our driveway by 2 witnesses. I interviewed my stepson, who's the one that saw the Bigfoot down there. This happened in the same patch of trees, but it's happened in 2012. So I was taking a walk along the road down there at the end of our driveway. It was late afternoon. There's a patch of woods that is off to the right of where I was walking. That's where he saw the Bigfoot just a few months ago. I heard what sounded like 1 or 2 knocks, which kind of freaked me out a little. So, and trying to rationalize it away, I thought maybe it was a deer hitting its antlers on the tree. But really now, I know that that wasn't the case. I called Jim and I asked him if deer do that, and he didn't think that the sound that I described would be a deer. A few days later, Jim and I were walking in that same area along the road, and as we walked by, I thought I heard what sounded like a whoa, like a gorilla would make. That type of a sound, coming from that same place that I heard the knocks. Now, Jim had heard something at the same time, but he thought he heard a knock. So we were talking when it happened, and we're not exactly sure what we heard. But just over the hill from that is where my daughter-in-law saw the Bigfoot cross the road, and it would be connected. You could just walk up the hill and come out right there where we were hearing all that stuff. That all took place within less than a square mile. Now it was at that time, it was April 4th, 2013, I went down to the lake, was taking pictures, because by this time I had a good professional type camera, and I was out taking pictures. I saw an eagle, and I wanted to get a picture of it. It flew across the lake. The lake had been drained, so it was kind of dry at the edge, but towards the middle of the lake, it was still wet. So I stood there and waited for the eagle to fly towards me to get a better picture, but it never did, so I decided to just try to walk closer to it. And when I started walking in, I saw these footprints in the ground, right, where you would walk in. You can see toes there. But I took Jim with me the next day or so, and we saw trackways leading all around the lake of footprints like this. So that was the first time I found footprints at the lake. But just so you can understand, Jim couldn't do all this stuff. It's laughable that Jim is the one doing this stuff. He doesn't go down in the woods making shelters, breaking trees over, making structures, making footprints all over the place, turning foxes inside out. Okay, he's not doing this stuff. So anyways, let's move on, and I'll give you more reasons why it's not Jim. Okay, now in the spring or summer of 2013, I'd gone to the bathroom, and we had the doors open. The TV was on, but Jim and my stepson both heard a roar. I mean, it was, from what they explained, a loud roar that came from over in the area right over there, just to the west. And here's how they explained it. So they were sitting in the living room talking and watching TV, messing around on their phones. The door and the windows were open, but they said they heard an extremely loud roar followed by coyotes yipping right afterward and running from the area of the roar back towards the trailer at the back of the property. At the same time that my husband heard the roar, my stepson looked at him and said, "Turn the TV down," because he heard it too. And then, I believe it was the same week as the roar, my daughter came and woke me up in the middle of the night, And she said she was hearing what she thought was Bigfoot stuff going on down in the area of the woods just below the hunting trailer. Her bedroom window was open and it faces that area of the woods. She said that she heard something big crashing through the woods and what sounded like a monkey being strangled. I'm not sure, but I think she also said something about hearing coyotes too. But by the time she woke me up, it had stopped. The next day, I was very curious to see if I could find any evidence of what happened the night before. Against my better judgment, I went down in the woods to look around. I walked by that area where my daughter had heard the commotion, but stayed on the path, and then I walked down to the pond. I didn't see anything unusual, so when I got down there, I decided to just enjoy the walk and take some pictures. I was crouched down by the pond taking some pictures, and I heard coming from up on the hill near the hunting trailer what sounded like crack, crash. It was a very loud tree that had been pushed over. I mean, it was like crack, crash. It was scary sounding. So I became very uncomfortable and decided it was time to get up out of there. I would say that this is the only time that I have ever felt not welcome in our woods. It definitely felt like someone was saying, "Leave, we don't want you down here right now." And interestingly, this past year, in 2015, in that same area, we discovered an area of stick structures, tree breaks, arches, a large log stuck up in the fork of another tree, and so on. So, I mean, Jim didn't do that. At that same time, there was a story in our local newspaper on the front page of an account of a family that was sitting outside having a fire, and they saw a hairy hand come out of the bushes and try to grab their dog. So see, it's not just us either having activity. There is other stuff going on around. My stepson has taken several calls, especially at that time, that he had to go investigate Bigfoot activity going on around the area. So anyways, I can't tell you guys everything, but and when I talk a lot, my voice gets weak, and then I start sounding like I got a frog in my throat. So I'm sorry about that. But there's another lake not very far from here, and my son and his friend were down fishing, and his friend went back to their truck to get something, and on his way through the woods he saw a Bigfoot down there. So that's just another incidence of someone seeing one. That is a juvenile print that I found going up that hill where I saw the ones the day that it was the day after I smelled the gorilla smell coming. The footprints were coming down the hill and looked like it slid. Well, this was going up the hill, and it was later, a couple years later, but this is what I mean when I'm saying I saw footprints going up and down that hill. This is just one example of that. And here's a super large picture of a footprint that I found down on the east side in November 2015. See, Jim ain't making footprints in our woods. And I find footprints all over the place. There's an example of one out in the field. It's just, it's crazy to think that Jim's doing all this stuff. There's a footprint right outside of our bedroom window. There were footprints right in front of the porch where they were coming up and messing around. Footprints right here in the mulch. 13.5 inch. Things like this. Right back in there was where the gifting log was, where the interaction started, and then the Bigfoots took the interactions from there to our back porch. They're the ones that did it. Things like this that we found in the field, like an arrow type, pointer type thing, pointing right back there, and there was a stick stuck in the ground out in the middle of the field. Could have not in any way been from a tree, like falling from a tree. I find stick arrangements in places that Jim doesn't even go to, like that. Sticks stuck in the ground all over the property. Let's see. This is a picture of a tree break that Jim and I found together. It was fresh. That's the top of his head. You can see it's way above his head. He can't even reach it. And yeah, we found that together and it was fresh. I mean, I find breaks, I find arches. You know, Jimmy ain't doing that. I am not going to go back over all of that kind of evidence. If you want to see it, go back in my videos. It's at the beginning. This stuff is at the beginning of my diary videos. All kinds of stick formations and X's, and if you want to see stuff that I found down in the woods, go back and look at it. Jim didn't do it. Okay, now October 31st, 2015 is whenever I started trying to interact with the Bigfoots. Like I said, you can go back and you can read all about it in my diary video. But on November 6th, some very interesting things happened that could absolutely not have been Jim. But here is what happened on November 6th. Okay, nothing had changed at the gifting log. However, that evening my friend came over to visit and get caught up on what was going on, and we did some Bigfooting. I showed him around the area, and, you know, we came back to the house, and Paul wanted to do some wood knocking. So he showed me how to do it with 2 pieces of wood, and he gave me a nice set that he'd made. So when we returned back to the house, we got out of the truck, and he wanted to do some wood knocks here. So from right up here at the top of the hill in our driveway, we stood right out there. It was dark, and he used the 2 pieces of wood to hit together to make a knock. Well, when he did his very first one, immediately after he did it, we heard 2 loud vocalizations come from down in the lower field near the entrance to Creepy Valley, or perhaps a little bit up the hill closer to the driveway. We both looked at each other and were shocked because we knew exactly what those vocalizations were. I would describe it as a high-pitched scream or howl. It sounded like there were 2 individuals. So after trying a couple times more, nothing happened, and we went inside, and that's when Jim told me, because he was very freaked out, that I needed to go look at the back porch. I went out and looked at the back porch, and they had brought this shell, which was clear back at the gifting log. They brought it and put it on the railing. That's how the interactions at the railing started. That was a game changer. Now, Jim is a man of habits. He likes to sleep with a fan. So that night, after we found this and he was freaked out, here's what happened. Our bed at the time was right under a window, Our heads were laying right at the bottom of the window, and we left the window open to let air in at night. Well, here's what happened. Our bed was right in front of the bedroom window at this time, and Jim was so freaked out that they came up to our house that he slept on the couch that night. He wanted nothing to do with laying in front of that open bedroom window with our heads up against it. Yeah, he slept on the couch that night, which is very, very out of character for Jim. He never does something like that. So my question is, if Jim is the one that brought the shell up to the porch railing, why would he be so freaked out that he had to sleep on the couch that night? Why wouldn't he just be comfortable enough to sleep in the bed like normal? And the next night I had to move the furniture around in the bedroom to get it away from the window, because he didn't want anything to do with sleeping in front of that window anymore. So there you go. There's one thing. Why would he do that if he knew he was the one that brought the shell to the porch and left it there? That's an awful lot of acting and crap to go through and to make himself uncomfortable to sleep on the couch when he knew he was the one that did it. Now at this time there was stuff going on back at the gifting log that was incredible. Like I said, you can look back. They arranged stuff that I left, they rearranged it. So at this time Jim was working. He would have to have gotten up like super early in the morning and walked. It takes probably at least 15 minutes to get back to the back of the property to where this all was happening and do it before he went to work, rearrange everything, and then leave in the dark, and then, you know, for me to find it later. So, I mean, how likely is that? Really? It's not. Now, this was an exceptionally mind-blowing day for me, November 27th. This was the day that everything became, it's like everything clicked in my brain. And it was like, oh my God, these creatures are so intelligent, and this is real, and it's really happening. It's like everything clicked in my brain on this day. First thing that I saw was I'd put 2 squash out on the railing the night before. The next morning they were switched. This was on the 27th. Jim didn't even realize that they were switched. I had to show him that they were switched. And then a little bit later I found this up on the bench. Now, you can look into this story too. They had taken this bell off of a mouse back at the gifting log. It had disappeared. A few days later, I find this little, I call it a toy, like a rattle type thing that they had made. They took the ribbon with the bell on it and put it in the slit of that stick. And I found this on the bench with a rock beside it. Okay, now later that evening, I'm going to read you what happened. Okay, later that evening, in the day, I decided to go to the store and find another bell to give them since they liked the other one so much. I found one at a pet store, and I put it out on the railing. Okay, I put some things out. I put some apples up on that bench. I put some apples out here on the railing, but here's what happened. We went inside and we made some wings and we ate. We watched a little TV. It had gotten dark, and it was a pretty nice night, so we decided to make a little fire out back. And so we went out there to light it. We were bent down, and Jim lit the fire, and immediately we heard a scream come from the lower field just above Creepy Valley. I mean, just as soon as it caught, there was a high-pitched scream. Now, I was standing right beside Jim when that happened. And it happened as soon as he lit the fire. That is not Jim making screams come from down in the woods with him sitting right beside me, which he couldn't even make that vocalization if he wanted to. So it scared us both. We ran back in the house, and then after a while I came back out and I turned the light on, and I realized something was different on the railing, and I looked closer and I couldn't believe what was there. The bell was gone, and it was replaced by an old dipstick with the little red knob on it. Okay, Jim and I were in the house together, and they came and they took that bell and they put that dipstick there. So now here's something else that couldn't have been Jim. On December 10th, I took a walk to the back to the gifting log because I was still gifting back there, and when I got to the area I saw something up in a tree. Couldn't tell what it was, and I looked closer, and there's an apple stuck up in the knot of a tree. Now I had left it over here on the gifting log, you know, I can't remember now, a day or two before, whatever, and that apple was now up in that knot of that tree. Here's a picture of it. It was partially eaten, and it was up, it was like 5 feet up in a tree in that knot hole. Okay, now here's some more pictures of it, and that was like 20 feet to the right of the gifting log. Like, I never even went over there before. See the teeth marks? Okay, now I replaced that apple with a fresh one, and I kept the one that was partially eaten. So on the 11th, I went back and I found the apple that I left in that knot, the fresh one, which was in this tree. The fresh one that I left was it was like, it was probably 15-20 feet up in a tree, over more to the right, and it was also partially eaten. It was up so high that Jim could never have reached it. It's a spindly little tree that couldn't have been climbed. Okay, Jim didn't do that. Okay, now I had set this up on the 8th of December. I put that little mouse in a bowl on the porch, okay, and it disappeared. And then on December 14th, I got up early, was going to work, I went out to check things, and I found that mouse that they'd taken on the corner of the railing. It was unraveled, but they had taken the mouse, they took the yellow part that they unraveled and they put it in a pile, and then they set the mouse on top. So I was excited. I went back in the house, I got my phone to take some pictures, and when I approached the railing to pick this up from down in Creepy Valley, or not Creepy Valley, but near Creepy Valley, down in that lower field, I heard a scream, a really strange, weird vocalization scream. that they did it just as I went to pick this up. It was like they were communicating with me, letting me know something about them bringing that back. Okay? Not Jim. Jim didn't do that. January 31st was another example of us having, well, actually it was the 30th. We had a fire. We were both sitting out there. We heard vocalizations coming from both sides of the property. It was crazy. You know, he was sitting right there beside me. That kind of thing happens all the time. February 6, 2016. This is another example of something Jim could not have done. Okay, we decided to go for a walk down in Creepy Valley together. We returned home, and when I went back out to the back porch, for some reason I noticed that while we were gone, something messed with the dice and the tablet and the crayon that were out there. The dice were moved slightly, especially the number 1 was moved, and I left a tablet out, and here's how it was, okay? When we got back, the little flap on the paper was up, and the crayon was now behind the tablet. This is how it was when we left. This is how it was when we got back. Okay, so that means that they saw us leave, they knew where we were, and they decided to come up to the porch while we were gone. And they messed around. They do that kind of thing all the time too. Jim was with me. He couldn't have done it. Here are 2 little 5-inch footprints that I found in the back. You know, Jim didn't make those. Here's some footprints that I found down at the lake. It's probably, as the crow flies, less than 2 miles away. Footprints. Gigantic footprints. As you can see, this one beside my foot, toes, alright? Huge, deep footprints in the lake bed, alright? Jim didn't do that. That ain't from Jim. Those are giant footprints. This is one that was right in front of the railing where they come up and messed with things. This is 13.5 inches. It's in the mulch where they stood right in front of the porch and messed with the stuff. So not only was the stuff messed with, but there was also a big footprint right in front of it where they stood there and did it. Okay, this was another pretty significant day. It was March 12th, 2016. I went for a walk. Jim was at work. I found a new little arch. It was pinned. It was really pretty. I was down there probably about an hour or something like that. I found this near the arch too. Okay, but here is what happened. Okay, when I left for my walk, I saw nothing different on the railing. So when I got back, I was sitting down on the glider that was there to rest because I was tired, and something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. I turned to get a better look, and I found this laying on the railing, and the bell was gone, which was there when I left. So I was stunned. While I was down in the woods taking my walk, they brought this to the railing. It's a little metal basket like the one I got now out there that they mess with, but they've never taken it. But this one they brought, it was smaller. They stuffed leaves down in it, and there's a piece of grass sticking through one of the holes. Wasn't there when I left for my walk. I was gone about an hour. Jim was at work. When I got back, it was there. Okay? Jim couldn't have done that. He wasn't anywhere around. March 18th, 2016. I took a walk down in the woods and I found a bunch of crazy stuff. There was string strung all through the woods over this hill. I'm not even going to go into that, but I found that kind of stuff, okay, by an X structure. There was also a new X that I found. There was a stick stuck in the ground. But when I got back from my walk, Jim and I went to get groceries. And when we got back, it was about 8 o'clock. It was pretty dark. I told Jim that I needed to go out and set the porch up before it got any darker. So when I got out there, the first thing I noticed were the dolls that are usually on the railing were on the ground. One Bigfoot doll is tucked into the bush, base of the bush. The dolls were on the ground. You see, they had been messed with. This was while we were gone. This happened. Also, this was when they brought a piece of that blue rock. So I noticed the dolls on the ground, and then I looked over, and while we were gone, they brought that piece of blue, whatever it is, and put it on the railing as a gift. And I think from the way everything looked, that when we came home, they were out there doing all this stuff, and maybe I disturbed them because it was like they were in the middle of playing or something, and then they just left. And I heard some noises come from back by the shed, too, when I went out and found this stuff. So this happened while Jim and I were away together getting groceries. I came back and found it all. I found this piece of burnt firewood down over the hill going towards Creepy Valley. The only place it could have come from was our fire pit, okay? Jim didn't carry a burnt piece of wood down over the hill and leave it there. March 24th, 2016, there was a bunch of stuff happened. There was stuff knocked on the ground. The man doll in the car that were sitting up here on the railing were found on the ground. The man was face down. He wasn't in a sitting position anymore, and the car was placed clear over there under that bush. In a way, I mean, why would Jim do that? It looked like something had been up there messing around and playing with the toys that were left on the porch. So, like, a lot of weird stuff happened on the railing that day. Like, they'd flattened this out. It was like this. Okay. And then I found it like this, all flattened out. But what was really amazing was that I had left a tablet out with a crayon. I drew a smiley face on it, and there were little tiny fingerprints on it, okay? Like a little juvenile had left fingerprints touching it. You can see dermal ridges, okay? Couldn't have been Jim. It's too little to be Jim's fingers. They had touched it because they were curious to see what it was, and left fingerprints. Now on April 5th, 2016, the same day that, you know, a bunch of stuff happened on the porch, right over at the side yard, I found this 10-inch print in the grass. You can see the toe, big toe, okay? There's that big impression in the grass. That is a Bigfoot footprint impression in the grass from where they came up and were messing around in the porch. This happened on April 12th, 2016. I took a walk down at the back of the property and I found this stick stuck in the ground. It was like 3-4 feet long, stuck in the ground on an angle. Okay, Jim hadn't even been anywhere near that. This is the kind of stuff I find all over the property. Okay, it's Bigfoot activity. They make crazy glyphs and things. This was in the field. I mean, all you gotta do is look through my videos and you can see all that kind of stuff that they do. You know, this was found in the yard. They leave glyphs and stuff like that all over the place. Jim ain't gonna go around the yard making stick glyphs that don't even, like, he wouldn't even think to do that kind of stuff. Then on May 14th or 15th of 2016, I was out making my rounds, checking things, and I got to this spot in the driveway where it looked like some kind of a either a footprint or handprint or something. I stopped, took a picture of it, and from down by the spring on the west side, I got vocalized at. It was that owl sound like I'd heard before. It was almost like they were saying hi to me, and that had happened like a week before. I was over here at the side of the house cleaning up some stuff, and it was daylight. It was just about ready to get dark, but I was cleaning stuff up over here at the side of the house. I took something, threw it away in the trash. I started back around, and from down there by the dump area, I got a vocalization, like it was vocalized at me. It was like directed towards me. It was like hoo-hoo. It was that owl sound that they make, but it was like saying hi, like hey, hi, you know. So things like that happened could never in a million years be Jim. June 2nd, I was taking a walk. I was walking back right over here in this little locust grove beside the corn crib. I found a suspended little X, and you know, that's one of their places that I think they hide. So this was like it was marking the spot or something. It was like X marks the spot, okay, on the other side of the fence. Jim didn't do that. June 10th, 2016. Jim had gone to work, and while he was at work, I rearranged the porch railing, and then I decided to start cleaning the carpets. I had a carpet cleaner. It was loud. I was in here cleaning the carpets all afternoon, and I went back out to check the porch. This was before Jim got home. There was nobody else here or around. And when I went out to check the porch while I was in cleaning the carpets sometime during the afternoon, they brought this little rock and put it on the railing as a gift for me. So there's no way that that could have been Jim or anybody else. It happened while I was here by myself during the day. Like I said, my voice is getting weak from talking so much, so I apologize for the clearing my throat so much and stuff. But anyways, I'm going to continue on. Okay, so we're a little more than halfway through. And this goes to July of this year, and then the rest is all video because I quit keeping my written diary at that point. This was a 16-inch foot impression that I found beside the bush at the corner of the garage, which I'd found a 16-inch foot impression there another time too. So pretty sure that it's not that bush, but the one over at the corner of the garage. It's around the side of the house. But I'm pretty sure that, like, it seems like a big one maybe stood there and, like, stood guard while another one went to the porch and messed around, because there was stuff messed around with on the porch. So, I mean, that happened a couple times. And like I said, it was 16 inches. August 4th, 2016, I'd gone for a walk out back 7 o'clock in the morning down in that area. When I got to this point, I found a footprint, what looked like a footprint. I took some pictures of it. I also could see where it looked like something had walked into the grass back in here. So anyways, I got down here. I was going to turn. I turned left to walk this way. And as soon as I turned and started walking from back in here, I got whooped at really, really, really loud. I mean, it was without a doubt a Bigfoot. That was the most intense, amazing vocalization I've ever heard. Jim was at work and he couldn't have made that vocalization if he even wanted to. He couldn't have done it. August 13th, I was sitting on the swing in the front yard. We were out there for a while and Jim went in to get a bite to eat. He had been in there for about 5 minutes when I heard a really loud whistle come from down in the woods by the spring. It was awesome. It came from right down in here. Jim was inside. No way possible that that could have been Jim. August 29th, 2016. It was a Monday, so we were both at work. I checked everything. I always check everything before I leave. When I got home, I found that the dolls had been messed with. This is how that they were when I left. And this is how I found them when I got home. The man and the truck were on the ground in the car, which left just, see, this is how it was, left just the Bigfoot dolls and the girl, and they had moved the girl over and tucked her under the Bigfoot. Okay? That wasn't an accident. That was on purpose. And it was done while we were both at work. Jim was not home yet. On October 25th, 2016, I was up all night. Wasn't feeling well, and something was pounding on the house out there all night. And turning the doorknob sounded like they were trying to get in the door. That happened all night. Jim was in bed. I woke Jim up. We were both freaked out, and we still don't know what that was. But, like I said, there's no way that could have been Jim either. November 2nd, 2016. And what's weird about this is that was a 1-year anniversary of when I went back and found that they had interacted with me for the first time. But this day's one that makes me know that it for sure is Bigfoot's doing this. They left me this ball on the railing overnight. I went out and I found it. I was so excited, and I went in to get my camera to take a picture. I came back out, and when I went to pick it up, I heard a vocalization come from back in the woods. The railing's over there. I heard the vocalization come from back in the woods back there. It was a woo! It was loud but gentle sounding. I couldn't believe it, so I picked the ball up. I walked around the house, and I walked over there to the edge of the yard where I heard the vocalization. I held the ball up and I told them how much I loved it, and I was so happy, and it was pretty, and I said those things, and from the same place, the same vocalization came. Woo! I couldn't believe it. So I stood there a little bit more, and I said the same things. I talked to him. I held the ball up. I said how much I loved it. I held it down to my chest, like to my heart, and I said, I love it. It's so nice, and all that. I repeated what I said. And again, the vocalization, the same one, came from back there at the same spot. Woo! It was like they were talking to me. It was one of the most significant things that have happened to me. I was so touched and blown away, and they were communicating with me when I went and picked that ball up. Now that's in no way in a million years could have ever been Jim. And if Jim had put that ball there and has nothing to do with Bigfoots, why would any of that have ever happened? It wouldn't have. It's impossible. So it's things like that that make me know for a fact it's not Jim. Besides the fact that we sit on the front porch, we hear things. We were sitting out there one day together over here in our chairs, and we heard a whistle come from around the side of the garage. We both heard it at the same time. He was sitting right there beside me. Another time we were sitting on the front porch and we started getting that dead animal smell. It kept, wafting up on the porch, and we were like, oh, what is that? We're sitting there together, and it would go away, and then it would come back, and it would go away, and it would come back stronger. And it kept happening to the point where I was starting to gag. The smell was coming from over there, where they, hang out. Sometimes, when we're on the front porch, it seems like they hang out around the edge of the garage and, whistle, whatever they do. But we could smell them that night. It was crazy. I've heard them vocalize at me from the woods many times. Whistles. I've heard knocks. So anyways, I'm going to keep going because there's more stuff that's happened that couldn't be Jim. I'm getting tired, but I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this to show you guys it's not Jim. And then there's this, November 4th, 2016. Friday, 8:23 a.m. I left the porch with this yellow thread in the sink strainer. We left to go look for a new car. We were gone most of the day. We returned home, and when I checked the porch, at first it didn't look like anything had happened until I looked closer. The yellow thread that had been sticking straight up when we left at 8:23 a.m. was now threaded through one of the holes of the sink strainer. That happened while we were gone, together, looking for a car. Okay, this was October 3rd. I'd put some peanut butter out, and then that was on October 1st when I put the peanut butter out, but I found the peanut butter with the lid off, laying over in these weeds, or flowers actually, with a stick stuck in it, peeled back just a little bit. So, I suppose that could have been Jim, but I don't really think Jim's gonna, want to go playing in peanut butter with a stick. It's just not really his style, February 18th. They had taken peanut butter from the railing, reached for it, and left a footprint in the dirt right beside the railing. See the big toe right there? See the footprint? Okay. That's from a Bigfoot reaching to get the peanut butter from the railing and left a footprint. there was a bunch of other stuff happened on the porch that same day. And also, around the other side of the house, I found a large foot impression. It's kind of hard to see in this, especially with it being on paper. But there was a 16-inch foot impression in the grass, 16 or 17. You know, that's from a Bigfoot. March 30th is the day that I found they brought a tool back, left it in the grill, and I found the juvenile handprint on the inside of my garage door. It was smaller than my hand, so it couldn't have been Jim's, couldn't have been mine, or anybody else's. There was no children around, and the fingerprints that it left behind are not human. Nobody that I know of so far even can figure out what the heck that is. So, not Jim, not me. There's a picture of the dermal ridges and the weird prints that it left. Okay, I've gone through all of my written diary. Now I'm going to look through some of my videos and show you some of them too. There's been other stuff that happened too, like Jim and I were both sitting, well, I was sitting, Jim was standing in the living room together, and one of them came up and hit the house really loud. We were both there together in the living room. My son went for a walk in the woods, got growled at, and saw a rock be thrown through the trees. You know, I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple more examples of recent stuff that's happened that couldn't have been Jim because he wasn't here. So, we'll move on to that now. Okay, it's now 2:14 p.m. and I just got home from work, and I checked the railing this morning and didn't see anything different out here. And so that means while I was at work, they brought this little tiny, what do you call it? Rhinestone, like a fake little glittery, shiny rhinestone, I guess. Isn't that cute? It's October 31st, Tuesday. It's 1:27 p.m. I just got home from work, and when I left for work this morning, I checked everything, and the puppy was up on its perch. Now it's down here, face down in the wood pile. So I believe he's been moved while I was at work. And there's been nobody at home at all, so I think they did that. Also, something I want to mention is the June 26th, 2016 audio clips on the back porch. That happened while we were together all day and 45 minutes away from here. Nobody was home. All those sounds that happened on the back porch happened with nobody home and nothing that could have made the sounds that we know of except for a Bigfoot. So there's that too. So anyways, I don't want to leave any doubt in anybody's mind that somebody's messing with me. It's not Jim, and it's nobody else. I am not a dumb person. Nobody's fooling me. I've been very diligent about keeping track of everything, and nobody's messing with me. We have no close neighbors. The closest one is way up there, over an eighth of a mile away. They're 70 years old. He's got one leg. Our next closest neighbor's way down the road, and he's 80. An 80-year-old couple, so there's nobody else around. So there you have it. I also want to say that there are a lot of people out there that have never doubted me or Jim, and I really appreciate you guys for sticking beside me. So, love you guys, and just want to say thank you.